Hello, beloveds. It's Bevin. Or should I say bonjour? Because for whatever reason, I've been saying bonjour all the time as my default greeting. I guess I have a touch of the Francophile. I took French for many years, through middle school, high school, college, and yet I feel I'm only like functionally literate and conversational in French. But if I overhear a French conversation, I can usually figure out what they're talking about, unless there's too much slang or they go really fast. That's not ADHD cutie. Here I am talking about something I didn't intend to talk about. So today, welcome. This is my podcast, Bevin, a femme over 40 and her friends. I'm your host, Bevin. I've said my name 3 times. My co-host, Biscuit Reynolds, is in spirit, so he's, of course, always with us, overlording. And I'm in a pet sit, which is why I'm in a house that doesn't look familiar. For those of you who've watched, or if you're watching this, for those of you who haven't been here before, I'm really glad you started with this episode about my archives. I am in human design, a responding generator. And I don't know a ton about human design. I just know what it means about myself. And I do very well when someone gives me a topic, or like if I'm when I'm meeting with clients pretty regularly, I'll see like common things coming up, and then that'll give me podcast topics to talk about, especially solo episodes. And so this is my last question that I have in the queue. So if anybody has questions for me or topics you'd like me to cover for a solo episode, or even getting friends on to talk about them, hit me up, fatkiddanceparty@gmail.com. Also, thank you to everyone. I got a few messages from my solo episode last week. Today's episode is actually kind of a surprise to me because I had intended a recording earlier this week with a friend about the solstice. We're going to make that up on Monday, but I wanted to still do an episode today because this topic really like kind of rang true with some dream work I've been doing. Dream work, meaning the dreaming realm when you're sleeping, that's a liminal space. Multiple cultures have like heavy dream practices and see dreams as the dream teacher I've been working with has talked about how we don't get old stuff we've already learned in dreams. It's new stuff that is being revealed to us in dreams. And so we did a dream retrieval yesterday, and something I learned from her also a couple weeks ago during a different dream thing that we did, a different dream workshop. She talked about like if there's something happens in your dream and you can make it tangible, do it. So I had like the next day I had a dream that I was going through my wallet and sorting all my cards. So when I woke up sometime in that day, I went through my wallet and sorted everything, and I counted my money and I got my angel number. And I was like, wow. And then and I don't remember. Oh, I found a bunch of old movie tickets from pre-pandemic that I don't know if they're still good, but maybe I need to go to the movies. So anyway, you make something tangible. And I had this dream that I did a dream retrieval on, where like you can go back into the dream. I wouldn't do this for the first time without a guide, but I had a guide, so I did it. And she took us back into a dream. The parameters were like a good dream, not a hard dream or a scary dream. And to go in with an inquisitory thing, right? And so there's a person that shows up in my dreams a lot. And there was like a table that he was showing me. He's like an artist that I really like. And I have dreams about celebrities sometimes, and I have dreams about bloggers and people I follow on social media because they get really into your psyche, right? But I can tell when someone's like a projection from me or when someone's like a higher self that I'm visiting. And so this person feels like a higher self I visit. And there was a table that he was showing me, but then this like rush of people came in. So I wasn't able to really see what was on the table in the dream. So I chose to go back in and look at what was on the table. And during the dream retrieval yesterday, it was stuff from his archive, like old demo tapes and things like that. And so stuff like he was like excited and proud to show me. And so I was like, oh, how can I make that more tangible in my life? Right. And I was like, I have this great question about my archives. Why don't I do that work? So that's what this episode's about. So we're in Bevin's dream space. And we're growing through some stuff. I mentioned this in the last episode, but oh, and also thank you to the person who thought to tell me how hot I looked in my outfit. I really appreciate, and it's one of my unmet needs. I don't really hear how hot I am frequently from people I appreciate it from, just like friends. And I'm not dating anybody. And so, there's no one around to call me smart and pretty. So that's always like every person I've dated for the last 20 something years. I'm like, just call me smart and pretty when I'm feeling low. That really helps. Anyway, so all that to say, I want to talk about my archives. So this was a great question, and I've gotten this feedback a few times that there are some people who really like my solo episodes best. I personally like my episodes with my friends best because I love my friends, and like part of like having friends who pass away, because I've been, I just love a lot of people who, I will say specifically, I think when the medical industrial complex doesn't regard people's bodies as valuable, those people tend to die younger. So I've experienced that as a fat queer person. Um, I will say that like it changes your perspective on life when you have had more friends pass through the veil. So I really appreciate like those capsules in time, these great conversations with my pals. But so this person, longtime listener, a fan across multiple platforms, someone who's like followed me from place to place, which I so appreciate. Like as someone who has created openly on the internet since 2002, like I have quite a little snail trail. It's slow and steady, but it's a lot of content out there. So I actually really like it's something I appreciate, and I also am like, okay, well, I just do what spirit tells me to do, just create from my heart, and whatever I was talking about at the time was true for me at the time. And this is a lot of work I've done to have compassion and to regard every version of myself as doing the best she could with what she had at the time. And, even sometimes when I knew better and didn't do better, right? Like I know I was still doing the best I could. So, anyway, so this question was, I went back through your archives and listened to, and this is like a series of videos I was doing from like 2017 to early 2019. I did like a bunch of vlogs and interviews with people, kind of like a different form of this podcast, but it was more of me trying to maintain momentum because I had a video about my aerobics class, Fat Kid Dance Party Aerobics, that went viral in 2017. So I was like just creating a lot of content to create relationship and trust with my audience, right? And she said, it really struck me how different your life was compared to now. So this was when I was living in Los Angeles and I was engaged and I had two pets. Like my life was very different. And obviously, the biggest change is that you live in a rural area now, and you've talked about how crazy busy your life was before, but you also sounded a bit different. And you were around a ton of people constantly, so it must have changed your energy. I will say, absolutely. Like, I think now the amount of times I ground and clean my energy and clear my energy is like, I was lucky if I remembered to do that once a day. And I only barely had just started an energetic cleansing practice when I moved to LA from New York. And part of moving to LA from New York was just to see what life would be like if I lived in an environment that didn't have walls that shared with other people, because I knew that was affecting my energy. But I was also very busy and around lots of people all the time and did not have like the energy cleansing practices that I do today. So yeah, totally. Let's see. Do you ever watch videos I did back in that time, and what is my reaction? Um, I don't. I mentioned on this podcast before, like I like in order to battle the cringe thing that comes up, and that's like that experience of feeling exposed and vulnerable. I typically just create something, and if I feel exposed and vulnerable about it, like obviously, like I edit things before I create it. Like when I write, I do some editing, but like mostly I'm just one and done. Like I just like record the thing live and I just put it out there, and then maybe I'll go back and review the archives years later. So for this episode, I did go back and I watched a couple of the videos, one of which I had been wanting to watch again. I did a performance art piece about Mariah Carey and what she taught me that helped me with activism. And it was right. It was one of the many pieces of art that I've created in life is like parties. I throw a lot of parties. That's why my like handle on the internet is Bevin's Party, because I overheard someone at one of my parties saying, "Do I know you from TV or do I know you from Bevin's parties?" And it was from TV actually. This person was only just at Bevin's party for the first time. So anyway, I was like, well, we're about to have this trash administration come in. This is the first election with that orange guy. And we were like kind of girding ourselves, like, how are we going to do this? And I knew there was probably some wisdom I had from back then because we're going back into this now. That might be worth it now. So that's why I was excited to rewatch that. And I had that on my agenda. And then I rewatched another episode with my ex-fiance because that's part of the questions here too. And what was really interesting is like in both videos, and there's a lot I could have watched, but like there's only so much cringe I can bear. You know what I mean? Like just witnessing ourselves at different areas. I don't know if some people are like really into it. I'm not so into it, but I'm also like I don't know, like there's the 12 step phrase, like look back without staring. So you have to be willing to like review things in order to like learn from it, right? But I also, I create for you. I don't really don't create for me. I guess I create for me somehow because like it's what wants to come through me. And when I feel constipated, emotionally or communications wise, like I don't think that's good either. Feeling fully self-expressed is a really dope way to feel. So if you have creations that want to be created through you, you just got to show up to it, right? Like, and this is me talking to me. You just got to show up to it. I just finished reading the book, Rick Rubin's The Creative Act. I'm going to come back to that book. I'm already rereading it. I will reread this book many times in my life. It is a soothing audiobook, first of all. There's a little like Eckhart Tolle's Power of Now has a chime in it, and I hate the chime because it's just too jarring and annoying. And Eckhart Tolle has this like very soothing voice. I want to fall asleep to it. And then he goes chime, and it's really loud. Rick Rubin's chime is a gentle little moment. And like I can still fall asleep listening to Rick Rubin's soothing voice. And he's an incredible editor. Like that's where the real art is, frankly. Like I am not a great editor of myself. I don't have a ton of patience for that stuff. Again, we're an ADHD cutie. But Rick Rubin is an incredible editor. His book is a haiku. It's like no extra words, but it's like smart, wise ways of looking at things. And he says, discipline is a harmonious relationship with time. It's a habits girly. I know it to be true. So show up. You just got to show up to it. And read Rick Rubin's book if this inspires you. Okay. So do I ever watch videos I did back in that time? Not really. But I did for this episode. And let's see. How do you view that period in your life, the LA years, in terms of career and social life? Will you never go back to living in a big city? Okay. I view my time in LA as something I needed. And I really do think that like I was supposed to connect when I look back at the time when I got together with my ex-fiance, there was someone else I was dating right before her who kind of ghosted me and like did not want to do our work together in this lifetime. Like I know enough now about like soul contracts and the way those things work and the way those connections feel when you connect with somebody. And there's multiple people in my life who I've connected with in that way who didn't want to do their work with me in that lifetime. The cool thing about Spirit is that you have other folks who will pick up that contract and come and fulfill it for you with you, right? And I do think that my ex-fiance, that relationship was way more fun than the other one was going to be. And she so wanted to go to LA. And I am the kind of person who I would say, I mean, I don't know if I'm that way anymore, but I certainly have been in the past. The kind of person who would do things for love that I wouldn't necessarily do in my brain. Because like your ego will come up with like a million reasons why not to do something. But if spirit is nudging you to do something, I would encourage you to do it, right? Like I think Spirit told me to is enough of a reason. I've got a blog post a brewing about just saying that Spirit told me to. Spirit's been telling me to start a Substack for years, and I have been like, I have a million reasons why not to. It's a hassle. It's another thing to copy and paste to because I'm just using it as a broadcast for my blog, right? Which I already publish on a website, right? But I realize there's people on Substack and people get emails from Substack and they'll read it, like, and maybe it's just another way to leverage information sharing. People can repost a lot easier on Substack. So I did it. I just decided, well, if Spirit's telling me to do this thing, let me just do this thing. So I did the thing. So I just want to say Spirit told you to. So I think Spirit was telling me to move to LA, although I can't even go back and like see the signs for that, but I do think that was part of my destiny. I think I was meant to be there for a while. And because it's funny, my old roommate from New York came to visit while I was still in LA, and she was like, "Oh, I wish we had moved here." Like, and I'm like, man, and like, and Biscuit Reynolds, like, I can see back in time, like when we would have moved to LA if that idea had ever percolated for us. And like Biscuit Reynolds was available, my cat was available for adoption in 2013, and then again in 2016 when I adopted him. He was a failed adoption that came back to the agency. So I just think it's interesting. Like I can see where he and I were meant to align, and that yeah, my life in LA was unfolding for me and I just couldn't see it, wasn't aware of it. I needed someone else to help facilitate me leaving the legal profession, which is what she did, and getting me to move to LA, which is also what she did. She was relentless about getting me to move to LA. But whatever. Some people only understand the language of pain, and some people only understand the language of like, secure attachment, bringing you to a really risky place, right? Which is just releasing a career. I still can't believe I did it. Like that's just the Bevin from the past who is like clinging to law school and lawyering as like a way to keep me safe. Something I think about a lot about the LA years is that I was not willing to bear uncertainty because I'd never been taught how to bear uncertainty. And so because I wasn't bearing uncertainty, I was telling myself lies to keep me safe. I can tell in hindsight, like where my intuition was like ready to break up with my ex. But I was never conscious of that. Like I was so devoted to her. Like when she broke up with me, which is what ended up happening, I was still committed to the relationship. I was just like deep into it, right? And so I think that is something I'm proud of in myself, is like my deep commitment to things, but I'm not proud of the ways that I was ignoring my intuition. But again, I didn't know I was ignoring my intuition. And like I didn't realize what those signs were because my body, because it needed to keep me safe, like kept like buried some rage that was deep down. And then when that came through, I had an experience in November of last year where it was just like some people who'd been in my life for a long time were incredibly rude to me and a little bit mean to me. And I felt this rage come up. And I was walking with the feelings. I was releasing the feelings. I was letting it flow. And then I had this like ha moment about this moment in my relationship where my ex really didn't take my side in something. And I was like, oh, that's why I stopped being attracted to her. That's why we got the lesbian bed death, because I didn't feel safe with her anymore. But I wasn't even conscious of that stuff. Right. So when I look back on the LA years, I just kind of see a version of myself that was like performing Bevin. And not like I wasn't being my authentic self, because I certainly was, but like I wasn't rooted in my spirit. And I think the difference that you might be hearing in my voice is just like a rootedness into my spirit and like an ability to channel that has expanded. Because at that time, I was developing and teaching Fat Kid Dance Party aerobics. And that was like my first real experience of channeling. And then eventually I took a cool media training coaching program that taught me how to just really drop into myself and be present in media in a way that I wasn't before. And so I think like, yeah, probably over those videos, you can watch like the progress from having done that course, because I did that course while I was having that video practice. But anyway, all that to say, like, you just develop over time and you become a deeper. Okay, I can't speak for everyone. I develop over time and I just become a deeper, more authentic version of myself, even though I have been living authentically for quite some time. I don't even know how to pack this box back in. Like, I was talking to a psychic friend the other day and I was like, she's like, I don't think I could have a normal job again. And I was like, girl, you're talking to me. Like, I can't do normal anymore. Like, I think normal's a toxic made up thing, but like, you always have in the back of or I always have in the back of my mind, oh, maybe I could just get a job. Oh, I would die. Like, I wouldn't die, but like, it's just like such a thing where I would feel like I would have to like become this like office version of myself again. And like, I can show up somewhere where I can be my full self, but like, imagine me like working at a law firm again. No, thank you. Oh, all those toxic bosses. Oh, no, thank you. For all of you who deal with toxic bosses, I salute you. Okay, where are we going with this? Okay, so it's just hard. Once you become yourself, it's hard to not be a version of yourself that's honest and real, right? I want that for you. I want you to be truly yourself. Um, okay. how did I view the, okay, we talked about how I viewed my LA years. Okay, in terms of career and social life, um, social life, like, you know what? Like, I'm glad that I ate the apple when the apple tree was full of fruit. I was so busy in when I was in LA, but I didn't see the quarantine coming. I didn't see this like long period of my life where like I was just kind of in this in. I feel like I've been in this in between uncertainty place for 5 years, and like I don't know. I don't know what's next. I feel like there's a card I keep pulling from one of my Oracle decks that talks about like the imago cells. I'm probably pronouncing that incorrectly, but it's like the cells of the caterpillar becomes total goo. It's a very painful process to become goo, get in the chrysalis or create the chrysalis, and then become the butterfly, right? But that's like there's these like in between cells that are not caterpillar and not butterfly, but they have they contain all the codes, right, that are becoming. And I think a lot of us are going through this right now. I've heard people call it ascension sickness and ascension symptoms. Like, and I think what's happening, or at least this is what I've been hearing from the Akashic Records when I connect about this. It's like we have light codes that are lighting up in us, like more information and more connection to things unseen that are lighting up in us. And that process is painful, right? Like that process has like just sometimes you just need a lot of rest and a lot of space for that to happen. So I feel like that's kind of like in my life what I've been going through, but then I think also like in this time, that's what a lot of us are going through. So it's a little bit of both. Um, okay, I will also say this, when I left LA, I knew my story with LA was not done. And I have, when I've talked about like dating, like I remember asking Chrissy Tolley in one of her group readings, probably about a year and a half ago, I was like, what about dating? And she's like, yeah, you shine really bright for people in the Pacific Northwest. She's like, can you get to LA? Since she's not the first psychic that's like, there's still more to the story in LA. So I kind of see a future where I live in LA part-time and then live up here because I feel really rooted up here on the Olympic Peninsula. I love it. I love living in nature. I love evergreen forests. I love that the winter, even though I feel resentful of the loss of light, like the resentment this year is so big. And I'm like, what? And it's not like we don't lose light in LA, and it's not like it isn't cold in LA because it sure is actually. But it's just different here. And like there's a little bit of hunkering down and like there's moss in the forest. So it's like evergreen all year. Anyway, I love living here and I think it's really like home for me. But I would love to be working in LA, like here and there on projects and things like that. And I also kind of high key think there's like a romance in LA for me. But I don't know how to facilitate that. I haven't been back to LA since I left. I've been back to California a couple of times, to Sacramento a couple of times, and I went to school at UC Davis, so it's a little bit of a former home for me. And I grew up in the Bay Area. So I've been back to California, but not to LA for some reason. And so I'm just allowing opportunity and circumstance to come. And when it feels right for me to try to create that, I'll create it. I've been kind of high key hoping to get like a long-term pet sit in LA or Tucson sometime in the winter, but who knows? You know, I don't know how to make that happen. Like I'm on an app up here. I'm on the Rover app for pet sitting, but the Rover doesn't have like a travel option, and I wish they did. So anyway, so I do think that I'll be back in LA, but I don't think I would ever live in a big city again. I was just rewatching Mrs. Maisel and considering I'm rewatching Mrs. Maisel season 5. I just needed to like be reminded of like the time when she hit, you know what I mean? Because it's like the 5 seasons of Mrs. Maisel are about her starting her comedy career and then when she blows up. So it's like that waiting period, the 5 years. And that's like the interesting part of the story, right? Isn't that funny? Like when things are hard, then that's the plot years. And then when things are easier, like it's not as much plot. I'm tired of plot. Just tired of plot. I just want to coast for a minute. That's kind of in many ways like LA did not feel like I was coasting, but I was kind of coasting. And I think that's fascinating because it was hard like starting my aerobics class. I did not know. I mean, I knew what I was doing and I didn't know what I was doing both at once. And I think that's a good place to be in to start something because like you got to learn in order to get going. My league said an interesting thing about imposter syndrome recently. She's like, if there's a knowledge gap, just start learning stuff, right? Like if that's something that actually is informing you feeling like not up to the task, go and learn stuff. So Anyway, so I definitely miss the social life and the opportunities that come up with living in really big cities. And that's possibly why I was so busy because there was just so much opportunity to be around people. And I've been doing this deep dive on 2009 because I had a big Pluto transit. And since Pluto moved into Aquarius, I was like reviewing like what happened during that Pluto transit. It was actually really good for me. Like that was a year I really came into my own and into myself. And like it was a year where a lot of my friends were alive and we were all creating stuff together. And it was really cool. And like, of course, like now with hindsight, like I appreciate it far more than I did at the time. But I also kind of recognize like the depth and experience that I have in life that I did not have. And right, like we never know what we have till it's gone, really. And so my goal in the rest of my life is just to know what I have when I have it, right? And to be an appreciation for everyone around. And I just want to take a pause and just say, I appreciate you for tuning into my podcast and listening to me talk to the internet, because it really does feel a lot of times like I'm just creating into the void. But I know there's some folks out there who listen slash watch because I see the stats. So I know there's some folks around and like, it's really cool, especially like, you know, with the letter writer here, just like taking the time to like listen to old stuff and reflect on it and ask me juicy questions. I appreciate this being a little bit of a dialogue. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I appreciate you just for tuning in. So your time, your treasure, and your talent are the three things that you have to give to the world. And your time slash attention is the thing that like all of these big companies are like clamoring for, in addition to your treasure, of course. So I do appreciate that people value my perspective on the world. And I'm really committed to continuing to create because I know that my perspective is very distinct from everyone else because I'm one of one, right? And there have to be different perspectives on the world than what, like, you know, Elon Musk wants you to think, or what, you know, big media wants you to think, and big pharma wants you to think, and all of that kind of stuff. So, okay, so there's more questions. I watched the videos you did talking about your wedding, and there were even some with my ex-fiance. She was a co-star in many of these videos. She's very present in my life. I know it's been many years since you broke up, and I've listened to your gay divorce episode many times. Shout out episode 2. But do you have some different perspectives now about your relationship and breakup, now that a lot of time has passed and maybe the wound isn't as raw and angry anymore? Great question. I have been surprised, like very, very surprised how much work I had to do to root that relationship out of me. I was really like, it's funny because I was kind of glad the relationship was over within a couple of months after we broke up. I was like, especially once she moved out and I wasn't living with her anymore. And I realized that living away from someone who is very anxious all the time felt great. I could not, like, you don't know the energy drain that someone's having on you until that person's not in your life anymore. My mom was actually just reflecting, like we had lunch a couple of weeks ago, and she's reflecting that she had talked to Dara right before my ex, right before we broke up when things were like rocky. And she was like, you know, she was like, I need you to go to therapy and I need you to do this and I need you to do that. And I did all of the things she asked me to do. And the only thing I asked her was for her to go to therapy to work for her anxiety. And she did not do that. But I did all that. I was literally so committed to fixing that relationship and making it work. And so my mom had chatted with her and she had reported to me after we broke up. I didn't know my mom had this conversation with her. And she had said, I just heard her trying to control you and like wanting to control you and being like really tied up in like your choices. And I was like, yeah. And so we were reflecting on this. And my mom was saying like, yeah, she was really worried about you burning bridges, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah, that had everything to do with this like one instance with this one guy who I was working with until it was just clear he wasn't living the values of the mission that he was saying that he was wanting to live. And I couldn't attach my name to it anymore. He was like openly lying about a trans woman of color and her experience at the workplace. And I had witnessed her side of things and I'd witnessed everything that had happened. And so when he sent a lie to the whole staff, that's how I quit. I just responded to the lie and I said, this is what I witnessed. And I'm tired of waiting for this stuff to change. I'm out. And so that was a bridge I burnt sort of dramatically. But it's interesting. When my mom said that, I took some reflection time. Oh, this retrograde has been big on reflection, hasn't it? You want to do all the rewords during retrogrades, and we're in a Mercury retrograde. And that's our planet of communication. So it's a good time to review, reflect, and all of that kind of stuff. But we also have Mars in retrograde, which is typically like our drive in life and our work and our career. So it's a good time to like reflect on all that stuff too. And I don't think there's a single bridge I've ever burnt that I regret. In fact, every time I like kind of pause and think about a bridge I've burnt or someone like I've blocked or released from my life, I was like, there's some level of abuse in there. Or if it wasn't abuse, then it was just like mindlessness that's on the end of malice, right? And in a way where like I'm like, I'm done with this. Like, and I don't regret any of it. So if like I, from like continual healing place and my continual growth, don't regret any of these burned bridges, I think it's all good, right? Like there's plenty of relationships I have that are still conciliatory, even if we're not in relationship with each other or actively working together. I have a massive network and I have a lot of people I consider friends. Like, I think I'm all good. Like, I'm just like part of life is growing and growing away from people and like learning how to recognize when something's aligned and when something's misaligned. And at that time, I was not tuning into my intuition when connecting with people. And now I do. I take a beat and I listen to my intuition. Before I commit to something, I pause. I check my calendar, always have good calendar hygiene. That's my system for you. Check your calendar, but then also I check my intuition. I just ask. And then 3, I run the play. Like I feel what it would feel like to like do the thing or say yes to the thing or be in partnership with someone or whatever. And I see how that would feel. And if I don't feel peaceful about it, I'm not going to do it. Because like life is too short and there's actually not that many things you have to do in life. And at this point, I'm being very frugal with my money and my energy and my talent. And my social battery has been remarkably low. I'm like easily annoyed by things. And I really just think it's like more work I'm doing on boundaries and like figuring out the container I need for the life that I want to live for me. So I don't feel it's funny because I like the wound isn't raw and angry anymore, but like I don't feel warm and fuzzy towards my ex either. Like I just feel like I watched one video with us because I wanted to answer this question and just like kind of review. And like it looks like she's just like, I don't know, the vibes aren't there. I remember in that time, I felt such genuine love for her and like connection and when things were hot, like I felt very drawn to her. But like after that point of like when I was suppressing rage that I wasn't even conscious of. And again, at that time, I was not seeing a therapist. I started seeing my therapist 6 weeks before we broke up. And when I started with my therapist, my intention with my therapist, I laugh about it now. He and I both laugh about it now because I'm still with him and I'm not with her. And I told my therapist, I was like, I want to change so that I can be a good partner for my partner. And that's like probably codependent, but like also it was genuine. It was what I wanted. I wanted to be a good partner for her. And like I worked really hard to be a good partner to her. And I can see now because I've grown so much how I could be an even better partner to her. But I won't because I don't want to. And I don't have any desire to be in connection with her. And she's the one that cut off our relationship, ironically, talking about burning bridges. She was the one that was like, um, on our wedding weekend, sent me an email saying that an email so long that Gmail clips it off and you have to click a button to go to it, explaining why she didn't want to be my friend. And I was like, wow, okay. So that was it. Like I don't have a relationship with her, nor do I want to. I recently watched this show called Nobody Wants This on Netflix.com, starring Adam Brody. Wow, I forgot what a crush I had on Adam Brody in the early aughts. What a high. As a rabbi. And it's very Jewish. It takes place in the neighborhoods in LA where I lived. There's like a temple that they film at that my friend had his bat mitzvah at. He had a later in life bat mitzvah. And like there's so much about it. Like the family, like the Jewish family of the rabbi, like reminded me a lot of my former in-laws, and I actually really miss them. Like I really loved her family. That was, you know what? May you all be blessed with excellent in-laws. It's really good. But you know, sometimes you just gotta say goodbye to a whole group of people because you're not going to be with that one person. But it really like showed me I still had some grief, not around the relationship maybe, but like circumstances around it. And yeah, so I cried a lot in a way that I didn't expect. But I mean, it was like specifically triggering, like, oh, here's your old neighborhood. Here's like the whole life you used to live in a fictional format. Grief is funny and triggers are funny because you don't like my triggers are so weird. They are not like when someone does a content warning, that doesn't really matter to me because you can't possibly guess the content that will set me off, nor can I always guess the content that's going to set me off. So be gentle with yourself. Be gentle with myself. I'm as gentle as I can be. I do wish that I had had more dating experience since that time. I seriously cannot believe I've been single for 5 years, going on 6 years. I would never have guessed this length of time. I feel like I'm the hottest I've ever been, which like is fun because like I think in LA when I was living that life and looking at these videos, I also thought of myself as the hottest I'd ever been. And so I think that's great. Like I feel like I'm just getting hotter and better at being in love relationships and better at being a Bevin in the world and better at loving my people. And those are the things that really matter to me. Better at teaching aerobics. I love my aerobics class. And I really hope that more folks will join us on the dance floor. The community is really special. And in these times, I think we really need community. I have some incredibly vibrant communities that I'm part of that are worldwide. And then I have some local community that's been very exciting to develop. But like, community just means you keep showing up. So patreon.com/FKDP Fat Kid Dance Party, which is aerobics for anybody who feels left behind by mainstream fitness. I also teach standing stretch classes. I don't like to stretch on the ground. I don't like laying on the ground for movement. I really don't like laying on the ground for movement. I like standing. I like my nice little center of gravity, and you can do a lot of really effective stretching work standing. So, and I'm also just like, fun to be around if you like my pep talks and things like that. Those are in the Patreon too. And it's the best way to support this podcast. But there are lots of other ways to support the podcast too. Thank you to Kim for buying me this little chopper that was on my Amazon wish list. I'm so grateful. I was just thinking about that chopper the day before it arrived. I was like, oh, I hope someone gets me that because I was like, here's 2 days of soup because I was like, doing 2 days of soup preparations because the best soup takes 2 days, or maybe some good soups don't take 2 days, but I really like to do a good hearty bone broth and then a really good soup. And I think things with like meat and things in them that really get the chance to just fall apart. Oh, yum. Anyway, I hope this was helpful. I hope that you got value out of this. And I hope that when you renew and reflect, that you take the pause to be gentle with yourself and just remember you're always doing the best you can with the tools that you have at the time, including right now, including back then. So much love from me to you, and I'll see you again real soon.